Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Joining us now for his monthly check-in is our friend Andy Borowitz, writer, comedian, New York Times bestselling author, creator of the TV show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and, of course, creator of the wildly popular The Borowitz Report on Substack now. You can check it out right there, videos and articles. Andy, nice to see you, my friend. Thanks for making time again.
Nice to see you, Dean. Although I've got to say, when you said it's our monthly check-in, that sounds a little bit like a welfare check. Like you're just, checking in to see that I'm okay. I'm fine. I swear I'm
You're
fine.
okay. I'll tell the local authorities they don't have to come back for a month. It's a monthly check. How is Andy? He seems like he's okay. I mean, I think Trump needs a monthly check-in. He needs
Yeah.
something. I mean, his speech last night, I've never been yelled at so much by someone I wasn't dating. I mean, that was a lot of yelling.
Oh my God. It was very nice segue, by the way, talking about looking on somebody who needs attending to and Donald Trump.
Right.
It was shocking on a lot of, first of all, um, this is something he does, which is he tees up a big announcement and then doesn't announce shit. I remember in 2012, this has gone back a few years, but remember he was in the heart of the birther stuff and he was saying, I'm going to, send a private investigator to Hawaii and I'm going to get the birth
Sure.
certificate and all that stuff. Well, he spent days teeing up that he was going to make a major announcement. And then he made it. And I remember I was working on a show and we were really eager to see the announcement and everything. So we turned it on. And the announcement was something like, I'm really serious about this birther stuff. So, like, this is a guy who just wants attention. And unfortunately, because he's president, he gets to say whenever he wants, I'm going to cancel Survivor for the night and just be on
Right.
television. He didn't have anything new to say. But my question to you, Dean, is who is the actual audience for this? I have a theory because, a lot of people are saying he's trying to persuade the American people that they're not crazy, that things are really awesome. It's A plus 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 plus. Who do you think this was really targeted to?
It's a good question because you can't lie to someone about how their own economy is, right? So I think it's not, I don't know if his calculation is, I might convince people other than he likes attention. If he figures he can just say it out loud and was like, say the economy is great, Donald Trump said it. So maybe he feels he can get, or usually it's just shoring up his base. Like everything is for his base. So maybe telling them, don't listen to Democrats. It's fake. The economy is great. You really can't afford things. But there's no calculation in the sane world. Let me put it that way. You can't tell people the economy is great and prices aren't high and the economy is not good. Unemployment's up from 4% to 4.6% now under Trump and higher. It's probably really higher than that. And prices are still going up. I mean, I don't know who, it's a great question. Do you have a sense of who it was for?
Well, I do, because that's why I asked you, because I obviously had an answer.
So it's rhetorical. I
It
shouldn't
was
even answer.
no, but I wanted to hear because it is a genuine question. So, you know how when he has like one of his cabinet stooges like Kash Patel or Pam Bondi testify at the US Senate and they like tear into Adam Schiff, and it's
Right.
very clear that their audience is really the audience of one, right? We
Mhm.
talk a lot about the audience of one. They're really just there putting on a show for the benefit of Donald Trump. Well, my theory about last night's speech, if we can call it that, tirade,
Yeah.
um, tantrum, I think the whole audience for it was, again, that audience of one. I think he was speaking to himself. I
Oh,
think this was an exercise in self-soothing. There are these things, and Dean, because we go back a long way, I used to joke about this product because it's one of my favorite products ever sold, which is, and it's still sold, I'm glad to know. It's not such a dated remark. There's something called inspirational shower cards. And these
ah.
are things that you put in your shower, and they say things like, I deserve to be happy, or I do a good job, or something like
Hmm.
that. That's what we were watching last night. We were watching self-soothing, self-healing, inspirational mantras, kind of him repeating this over and over again to make himself feel like he's in control. The
Interesting. I like it.
result was the opposite. The result was a look of sheer panic, really that I haven't seen since Dan Quayle debated Lloyd Benson in 1988. I mean, he was wide-eyed. I mean, I know that Susie Wiles got in a lot of trouble for saying that he had an alcoholic personality. I think he has the personality of a cokehead, actually. He looked like the former president of Honduras had sold him some of his best supply, or perhaps given it to him in exchange for the pardon. That guy looked like he was totally on something. He
Mhm.
was he was basically reading 50 minutes of content in 18 minutes, always a bad idea. And he was so fucking loud. I mean, he was like channeling Kimberly Guilfoyle at the RNC. The best is yet to come. He was sort of the best is yet to come, except he was saying the best is already here. Like this is just an unbelievable, great state of affairs. So I think it's like if I say it loudly enough, I will believe it, and maybe in a secondary way, other people will believe it if I believe it. I mean, that's the whole idea of a con, right?
Right.
You first con yourself, and then you con other people.
He did, and he repeats lies. Like, for example, he said last night something he said over and over that he slashed drug prices by as much as 400%, 500%, even 600%. And I'm not great at math, Andy, but I think once you get below 100%, that's free. So I'm not sure what 400% cut
Well,
in the price
I
would
mean,
be. Are
no,
we getting the free?
a lot of us have made this calculation, which is that basically AstraZeneca or Squibb or any of the Johnson and Johnson would be paying us to buy their product if you cut the price 500%. And I think that could be, when you think of all these people who are having a hard time making ends meet, before you go to the grocery store, you go to the pharmacy, you buy some, weight loss drug. You easily walk away with $700 because they have to pay you,
This
and then
is
you buy your
crazy.
groceries. So
Yeah.
problem solved. I should be in the cabinet because I've come up with a way to solve the affordability issue just like that.
And when you talk about like who is this for, this speech, the polling, even literally that day by NPR yesterday, showed his approval on the economy is the lowest ever. It's 36%. And 7 in 10 Americans say the cost of living in their area is unaffordable, including nearly half of Republicans. So people are saying it's economically it's challenging. Unemployment is up. We just got a jobs report the day before that. We're up to 4.6%. And he goes up there, doesn't address anyone feeling pain, doesn't do any of that. Things are a little high right now, but we're going to bring it down. He just opens by saying, I inherited an economy that was in shambles. I'm slightly paraphrasing, but that's not that much of a paraphrase. And that this is all Biden's fault. We're not 2 months in, we're a year in. Like this is
Right.
a year, and he was president 4 years before this. Like, who's moved by this bullshit?
Well, it's really shows you the limitations of a malignant narcissist because let's face it, pretty much anybody who runs for president is a narcissist up to some
Mm-hmm.
point.
Sure.
It's a question of really how good they are concealing it. Like I have no doubt that Bill Clinton is a narcissist, but he was savvy enough to know that a big part of his appeal was this ability to turn on the empathy. He would like crank up the empathy and say, I feel your pain. And then that goes a long way. Reagan had that too. There was nobody who had a more destructive economic policy than Reagan. Reagan would just eviscerated whole segments of society and shredded the social safety net and all of that. But he was great at seeming warm and avuncular, and that could kind of sort of paste over some of these moments where people were feeling bad. They would say, well, Reagan does care about us. You know who really was very bad at this, who Trump reminded me a great deal of last night, was Margaret Thatcher. Because Margaret Thatcher was the Iron Lady, as she's been called, but she was really bad at acknowledging that she'd ever done anything wrong, ever made a mistake. And I think that Trump's narcissism and his insecurity, his unwillingness to admit that something he's doing isn't working out, that really supersedes everything. So even though he sometimes has a very good sense of really what the public is thinking, I mean, the guy did get elected twice. Even though he does have a really good political sense on some level, his sheer narcissism overrides that.
It does. And also, when you were talking, I was thinking when you were saying this speech was really for him, it kind of makes sense then today, and you probably heard the news, Trump renamed the Kennedy Center after himself. It's the Donald Trump Kennedy Center, right? This is like you do to make someone feel better about themselves. Like, look, the economy's not going well. People aren't liking you. Your own base is beginning to turn on you. You've lost control of the Republican Party. Indiana Republicans just said no to you a week ago. What can we do to make him feel good? I know. Let's rename the Kennedy Center after him and put up plaques in the White House that mock Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Like you're dealing with a child, like a child, and you're doing what you have to do to make him feel better. And I think that's what we're dealing with.
Very needy, and again, very bad at hiding his neediness. And that's, again, a big problem that he's got. I mean, I guess the only consolation is that he didn't rename the Kennedy Center after Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I mean, that's the only positive I can see in this. But yeah, it's just a guy who he's addicted. Yeah, Susie Wiles was right in one sense, which says he had an alcoholic personality. He has an addictive personality. He's addicted to attention. He needs affirmation. It's like the shower cards all over again. He just needs constant reminders that he's okay. You really do wonder just how badly emotionally beat up he was by his parents. I think every
Yeah,
parent,
it's
and
terrible.
I'm a parent, and we have a lot of parents in the audience. Every parent should every day wake up and say to themselves, maybe have a shower card even with this, staying on it, say, I will do everything in my power to make sure none of my children grow up to be anything like Donald Trump.
I think that's great. I'm talking with Andy Borowitz, our friend, the comedian and writer. In Mary Trump's book,
Huh?
the first book that was a
Yeah,
bestseller, it's all about how the book's really about the father, not
right,
really about Donald. Donald's just a player in that show, but it's about how horrible the father was. And the father rode Mary's father, into drinking till he literally drank himself to death.
right.
And then made Donald a monster as well. And it's no excuse. Donald's an adult. He could have changed at a certain point. He chose to go down that path. But you're absolutely right. It's the father that really did this to him, for what it's worth.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I wrote an article about a lot of people saying Donald Trump's lame duck. I think lame duck is for people who politically are down in the polls, like the second term. They're at 35, 38%, and Trump is in that. And you're losing control of your own party, which is true. I think there's something added to Trump that no one had, other than maybe Ronald Reagan, which is the real cognitive decline. And
Mhm.
Reagan, we didn't see it the first 11 months. I mean, we didn't. I didn't. I don't, when I went back and read stuff, it came up later. Trump is really fighting cognitive decline to the point where the New York Times wrote an article a few weeks ago on it, documenting how his personal public appearances are generally between 11 and 5, and they're protecting him. Also, the falling asleep at events, at the Japanese prime minister, like really being confused, where they had to walk him away from the band. He just stopped and started staring at the band member. And it wasn't like a young woman or something. Like he just is staring, and she comes and gets him. Like if Biden had done that, and Biden did something close, but if Biden had done that, it would have been nonstop talk. But the New York Times, other doctors, Dr. John Gartner from Duty to Warn, have been talking about it. I think we're getting to the point of a Pinot, the president name only, where it's not lame duck. Like we don't know who's running things day to day. Literally, I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on, man. What do you think?
Well, I think something that's interesting, Dean. At the beginning of this term, there was all kinds of grandiose talk from Trump and Steve Bannon about how he might run for a third term.
Yeah,
There was
remember
all
that?
that talk. That talk has gone away. Now I think a larger question, it's a question again I want to pose to you. Will Trump survive 2026? I think that's the big issue because what I'm seeing in that speech, I guess if we'll call it that, Wednesday night, what I'm seeing is a guy who's in roughly the same condition as the East Wing of the White House. This is a guy on his last ankles, and I do not see how physically and mentally he can survive. It reminds me a little bit of there was a string of Soviet leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Brezhnev was the first, and then there was Chernenko and Andropov. I can't remember what order they came in, but they all started dropping like flies. And the difference between the Soviets and what's going on now is that the Soviets had the discipline to keep their dying leaders out of view. They were very
Right.
careful about that. And that's true in most dictatorships, by the way. If you have, a personalized dictatorship where all the power flows to one person, you make sure if that person is really doing badly that they stay out of view because you don't want, a weekend at Bernie's situation where you're just parading around this corpse. And in Trump's case, again, his malignant narcissism supersedes the wisdom of that because he can't resist being in public. He needs it. He needs it to believe that he exists, that he has some worth, some value. He has to be on TV. And so, whereas like wiser minds would prevail and say, no, 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 let's not put him out there in this
No
condition.
speech. Or let him do his speech, but we don't televise it. Just let him do his speech. Like, just, yeah, yeah. Oh no, it's on. Oh, America loved it. It was a great speech. You
It
could
was
do that,
amazing.
like, because
How
they'll
would he?
like people applauding. Why not just do that? But have you? I'm sure you've seen Death of Stalin. I recently rewatched it.
Yeah, I
I
loved
mean,
it.
I wonder what happens because everyone talking about JD Vance. Can he keep the party together? I wonder if the knives really come out because I don't know if Trump will be here. I can say with some confidence, not being a doctor though, he's not here in 4 years. Like he doesn't live out his term where he won't be in the office. He won't be competent. If they hide it, it's different. But I don't think he'll be there. And then you have the death of a Stalin situation where the competing people are there, and you have the really bad guy, and his name escapes me right now, who was part of that group, and then you had the more Steve Buscemi,
Steve Buscemi.
who was
Yeah.
like he was good. He
Khrushchev.
was sort of like good guy,
Right.
and
And
you
he
had
becomes kind of a bad guy, but he seems
and
like
they're all like in their own way. They're bad. But I wonder if you have this like really stabbing each other in the back, even prosecutions and that kind of stuff when it's over with Trump, or do they just rally around JD Vance because he's got the billionaires and the oligarchs on his side?
yeah, the problem is that JD Vance is maybe the least talented politician of his generation.
Hmm.
He is a human repellent. And that's really going to be a trouble for him. He was doing so bad. I'm from Ohio.
Oh, okay.
He was doing so badly in Ohio until he got that major cash infusion from the oligarchs and the nod. Don Jr. Orchestrated this nod from his dad. This yes, go kiss the ring, and then you'll get the endorsement. But I mean, left on his own, this is one of the least talented politicians ever, and one of the most unpopular vice presidents ever. And he's got big competition because, uh, may he rest in peace, Dick Cheney was not exactly popular or charismatic. And he, I think, held the title as least popular vice president for a long time. So I don't think JD is the heir apparent. I think it's a little bit like after Reagan left office and Reaganism was such a cult. And you had, HW was able to kind of get it over the finish line for one term, but there really was kind of a vacuum there. I think it's going to be worse this time for the Republicans because they've completely hollowed out the party. There is no party anymore. It's now just Donald Trump and then a bunch of toadying sycophants. You don't have a party structure. It's at the state level, it's interesting that in a place like Indiana, you still kind of do. There are still some people who think, hey, wait a minute, this guy is like at 34% popularity. Maybe we
Mm-hmm.
can act like sentient adults and exercise
Yep.
some agency. I mean, I got to tell you, the most encouraging development to me, Dean, is seeing the naked self-interest of politicians. Because that's what got Trump this far was that everybody was terrified about losing their jobs, so they had to suck up to this guy. Now that he's going down, the mass exodus is just really a joy to see. And you kind of forget that politicians in our democracy are just selfish, self-serving individuals, with some exceptions, but most of them just care about themselves. It's kind of, we're seeing this kind of Hobbesian, spectacular now where everyone is just acting out of their own self-interest. They don't really give a shit about what they said 2 weeks ago. And it's kind of cool. It may actually save our republic.
Selfishness will save our republic. That would be a good, bumper sticker. Like I'm
Well,
talking
you
about my friend
won't.
Andy
Let's put it
Borowitz.
this way: whenever you like appeal to people's morality or sense of what is right or wrong, that doesn't work. We've seen that over and over again. We just elected this convicted felon. So really, all we've got between us and utter chaos at this point is selfishness. And fortunately, that's in really good supply, I think.
There is, and it's interesting when I look back on the year, because it's sort of reflecting on the year now, we're near the end of it.
Yeah.
The big events, that were turning points. Because you think about it, a year from ago at this time, it was at a very alarming place we were heading into, rightfully so. We were going into we knew a vindictive Trump had the Senate and the House, and this is the guy with Project 2025, and everyone was reading all their books, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, and we're like, yep, you should be reading that. A year later, things have changed, but I don't say this because we're both comedians, but I think the Jimmy Kimmel incident was one that, when you look back, was potentially a turning point in all of this, where people said this is ridiculous. The FCC is literally pressuring ABC to take a comedian off the air. And the reason I bring it up is FCC Chair Brendan Carr testified yesterday before Congress, for the Senate. And Senator Klobuchar said, do you think it's appropriate to use your position to threaten companies that broadcast political satire? And he confirmed, yes, it is. It's in the public interest. I'm like, okay, wow, you learned nothing. But the people not just spoke about Jimmy Kimmel, people were outraged, even a few on the right, and they threatened Disney, the parent company, with disconnecting Hulu and other Disney subscriptions. And I really think that's one of those moments when we look the story is over, of Trump in this year and how he really got the true lame duck status. I kind of think that's going to be one of them. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think both sides of that, the boycott and the Brendan Carr piece in that story, are both illustrations of what I'm talking about when it comes to self-interest. Because Brendan Carr was on the record before Trump, before he had this position under Trump, as saying that political satire was one of the most important elements one of the most important contributors to a vibrant democratic society. You can look up the quote. I don't have it in front of me,
I
but
understand.
he was like, the hero of political satirists. Then he gets a job under Trump, and now he's suddenly saying, "No, we're in East Germany now. We must censor all the political satirists." So he's acting out of self-interest, right? He's got a job now. He's got the audience of one in Donald Trump, and so he has to completely reverse course. The same is true of Disney. They originally acted out of self-interest because they were saying, "Oh, we're under all this pressure. The president is going to do terrible things to our license. We're going to, these two station groups are not going to be able to merge because of this, all this stuff." And so they were fine with the censorship of Jimmy Kimmel. It wasn't until there was economic pressure put on them by the people that they reversed course. So they didn't do anything out of a sense of morality or what is right or
No,
wrong. They did things out of self-interest. And again, maybe I'm getting more cynical, but there's kind of, because I'm an optimistic person, I'm trying to see it as a strength of our society. Our ultimate desire to do what's good for us may be the only thing we've got going. It may be that we don't currently, in this environment, we don't have a great sense of community, morality, history, any of that, but we do kind of care about like our pocketbooks. And that applied to the Disney situation. We were able to use the force of capitalism to get them to change their minds. And we should be thinking about that in the future.
yeah,
In this administration, in any administration, the power of a boycott, when you have a society that is based on money as much as ours is, power of a boycott is not to be underestimated, I don't think.
I agree with you, and the boycott is protected by the Supreme Court as free speech. The idea of boycotting, it is a very powerful tool. People have used it through the civil rights movement, through the modern era. We see it all the time. So I want to get to your thing that you posted on Facebook to get your reactions. But first, tomorrow is the Epstein Transparency Act deadline. And
Yeah.
Pam Bondi is supposed to make public, in a searchable and downloadable format, all files related to the investigation, prosecutions, and custodial matters. What do you think? Get like a half a page?
Well, I feel, first of all, thoughts and prayers to Pam Bondi, because this just broke. She actually passed out at the DOJ from Sharpie fumes. So that was a rough thing for
Right.
her. I guess they were in some kind of a redaction marathon, and I just feel very bad for her. She's had a rough time, and I wish her well. But I think it's going to be like Watergate, Dean. I think the White House, there were so many junctures in Watergate where Nixon said, "Oh yeah, we're going to comply. We want to put Watergate behind us. We're going to release everything," and then he released like, um, you know, a piece of paper,
And
and
redacted tapes, like
and
tapes
people had to,
they
yeah,
cut.
people had to keep on going to court,
Right.
and ultimately a real powerful thing in the Watergate saga was leaking. I mean, there were so many instances where people, I mean, at the start, what really kind of initiated Nixon's terrible paranoia was the leaking of the Pentagon Papers and Daniel Ellsberg,
Mhm.
sending those out and those getting published pretty much everywhere because we had a very different kind of press back then. But I think if we're going to see a heavily redacted version of this and it's just a joke, first of all, that's not going to satisfy anybody,
No.
including the people on the right, including the QAnon crowd. Look, how do you get the QAnon people who are already paranoid as shit to be even more paranoid? Give them a heavily redacted document. They're gonna go full on X-Files on you and say they were hiding something. So I don't think that will work. If they will try it, and Pam Bondi will probably say no. We have active investigations against
Mhm.
all these people, so we can't release things because of DOJ policy. They'll try all that stuff. I think ultimately tomorrow is not going to be the big day people think it is. I think the big day will be when somebody who actually has a complete version of the files, and there are probably multiple people who do, put them out there and we'll all get to see everything. That's just I'm betting on that.
I wonder how bad the redactions are going to be. Like, so obvious to be like, New York businessman who owns Mar-a-Lago. It's like a black line. Like, it's Trump. You know it's Trump, right? Just tell us it's Trump, or it's like it's bad redactions. Like, it's like D and T are the only letters left and everything else. Like, this is Trump. No matter what, it'll cause media coverage tomorrow that Trump can't control. He's all about controlling the media narrative. The days like tomorrow, likely, even though they release nothing, and then the media will do, like you say, it'll get a one-day story. There might be some things that we talk about, and then it'll be lawsuits against DOJ under Freedom of Information Act requests or under this law itself, saying you have an obligation to release it, and that'll get litigated over years. It could be months or years, to be honest. And it just drip. The best stuff has been from the Epstein estate. That's been
Yeah.
the stuff that's been nobody. They can't redact it. Like we're actually seeing stuff. You're like, wow, this
You
kind of
know, Kate Mann, who writes a really great Substack, made a really good point a few months ago, which is she said, we don't really need the Epstein files. All we have to do is believe the women. And
wow.
I think that is a really good point, and I think that's a dynamic situation because just as Republicans are shedding their fear of Donald Trump and breaking from him, I think some of the Epstein victims who have been terrified about what the power of Donald Trump and the government could do to them are going to be emboldened as he sinks in popularity and influence. I do think that's a real possibility. There are credible allegations of rape against him, and they're very available to anybody who cares to Google them on the internet. There have been people who've come forward and made allegations and pulled back from suing him because there were death threats and things like that. But again, as he becomes, as you would say, president in name only, starts to fade, starts to visibly
Mhm.
deteriorate even further before our eyes, I would not be surprised if some of his victims finally say, you know what the fuck, I'm going to just go for it and tell everything.
I wish we would learn everything and all about all the people who abused these women and when they were children, so there could be justice and healing for them. Because I had Lisa Phillips on, one of the survivors, who made that very point. Like this helps them heal, and that's why it needs to be. And there might be nothing ultimately about Donald Trump that incriminates him for a crime, but the women deserve this stuff. So, last thing in the last couple minutes we have left here, Andy, I'm chatting with a friend, Andy Borowitz. You had a Facebook post and a ton of reactions apparently asking people as a public service. You said, I'm putting together a bucket list for Trump, not things he would like to do before he kicks it, things we would like to see him do. And so share a little bit. What intrigued you about the responses you got?
Well, what's interesting is I said, first of all, let's not talk about like, a Nuremberg style tribunal and him going to prison, because that's a given. We all want that.
Right, of course.
But before he goes to prison, what are some of the other things that he should do? And people were very creative, and I'm actually going to publish the entire list or some of the high points of the list this weekend. So I don't want to scoop myself. But,
Okay,
but
maybe
I
give us
was
one.
curious, Dean. But I was curious, Dean, to know what you would like to see him do. I have one thing I was just thinking. I would really like to. I don't want him to do community service because I wouldn't wish that on any community
Right.
at all. I don't want him like,
Showing
helping
up.
out at a school or something like that. But I think it would be great if he were a bag boy at a supermarket.
Oh,
because I think he's so in the dark about how much food costs because he's even worse than George H.W. Bush, who was so shocked by the supermarket scanner when he was shown how one works. He's literally never stepped into a supermarket. So I think just Trump, you know, bagging some groceries, maybe some of the math would sink in. I know he has some math issues, and you hear a lot of, hear a lot of numbers when you're by the cashier. You see them, being rung up. So I don't know. What about you, Dean? Have you given it any thought? Anything you'd like to see him do before he meets his maker?
sure. I'd like to see him do skydiving. I think that would be kind of fun. Run the New York City Marathon. These are fun for us, just because he's never going to make it, folks. That would be kind of fun. Maybe be a New York City cab driver where he has to listen to people and see how he reacts as people, because New York City, and the people in the cabs will say crap about, and if he's there, like, you're Trump, you suck. Like, I think that'd be so great, like over and over. And it's like, stop it, I'm president. It's like, shut up, drive me to 34th Street and Second Avenue, near side on the right, a loser. Like, maybe that would be kind of fun. But my heart goes for skydiving, and then we get to pack the parachute before. I go, no, trust us, it's going to be fine, Mr. Trump.
It'll be good.
That would be fine. So, Andy, where can people sign up for your Substack if they don't know already? What's the best place to follow you?
Well, if you just Google the name Borowitz, it'll take you probably your first thing on Google. Your first item will be Borowitz Report. And so if you type borowitzreport.com, that'll take you right there. And,
Boom.
and
Sorry.
something kind of amazing, Dean, next year, something to look forward to. We're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Borowitz Report. Can you believe it?
Wow. In the same year, we're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. You
I
have
think this is
really,
a bigger deal. I think the
I,
United States had a better chance of making it to 250 than this did of getting to 25. So
I look
let's
forward to
keep it in perspective.
I look forward to the Mar-a-Lago Gala celebrating your anniversary. All right. Thanks, Andy. Take care, my friend. Happy holidays to you and your family. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, Happy New Year, Dean.